The Galactic Council had warned humanity about the Vraxi. They were apex predators from a high-gravity world, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with obsidian scales and reflexes that made cobras look sluggish. Their young were born with fully developed hunting instincts and claws that could shred titanium. No species in the known galaxy had ever successfully raised Vraxi offspring in captivity. And certainly no one had ever been foolish enough to volunteer as a caretaker. No one, except Tessa Martinez. Grant Morrison watched through the observation window as his partner sat cross-legged on the floor of the habitat module, surrounded by 3 Vraxi cubs who were supposed to be the most dangerous juvenile life forms in the sector. Instead of hunting or stalking, they were currently engaged in what could only be described as a sock-sliding competition down the polished corridor. "This is absolutely insane," Grant muttered into his comm unit. Tessa's voice crackled back, warm with amusement. "You say that every day, and every day I'm still alive. The Council's xenobiologists said they'd try to kill you within hours. The Council's xenobiologists never tried giving them fuzzy socks." Grant shook his head, but he couldn't suppress a smile. 3 months ago, when the Vraxi ambassador had desperately sought help after a plague wiped out most of their child-rearing caste, every species had refused. The risk was too great. Vraxi cubs imprinted on the first caretaker they bonded with. But if that bond failed, they became uncontrollable killing machines. The humans had volunteered anyway. Inside the habitat, the largest cub designated Apex by the research team, but whom Tessa had named Buttons, after the way his scales clicked, took a running start. His powerful hind legs propelled him forward before he suddenly planted all 4 feet and slid across the smooth floor like a scaled missile. He crashed into the padded wall at the far end with what sounded like a delighted chirp. Did he just laugh?" Grant asked. "They've been doing it all morning," Tessa replied, reaching out to scratch behind the ear ridge of the smallest cub, whom she'd named Pickle. Turns out predator species enjoy play just like everyone else. They just needed someone willing to figure out what they found fun. The middle cub, Ghost, approached Tessa with something in her jaws. Grant tensed, his hand instinctively moving toward the emergency containment button, but Tessa simply held out her hand, and Ghost dropped a mangled sock into her palm. "Another casualty?" Tessa examined the shredded fabric. "That's the 3rd pair this week. There. Command is not going to approve your sock budget," Grant said. "Command can take it up with the Vraxi ambassador. I'm preventing an interstellar incident here." She wasn't wrong. The Vraxi Empire controlled 36 systems and had military capabilities that made even the militant Krathiks nervous. When their young were threatened, they'd been known to glass entire planets. The fact that humanity had succeeded where everyone else had feared to try had shifted the entire political landscape of the sector. And it had all come down to socks. Tessa stood up, and immediately all 3 cubs perked up, their predatory focus suddenly laser-sharp. Grant's heart rate spiked. But Tessa just pulled another pair of socks from her pocket, bright purple ones this time. "All right. Who wants to try the new ones?" "One." The cubs erupted into excited chirps and clicks, their tails thrashing with anticipation. Tessa carefully fitted the socks onto their hind feet, a process that required patience and trust that Grant still couldn't fathom. One wrong move, one moment of perceived threat, and those claws could eviscerate her. But Tessa moved with the same calm confidence she'd shown since day one. She'd grown up on a ranch in Montana, she'd told him, raising everything from puppies to foals to an ornery goat named Sebastian. "Babies are babies," she'd said when she'd first submitted her application. "They just want to feel safe and have fun." The council had nearly rejected her on the spot. Dr. Yilmaz, the lead xenobiologist, had lectured for an hour about the fundamental differences between Earth mammals and apex predator species from high-gravity death worlds. Tessa had listened politely, then asked, "Have you ever actually tried playing with them?" The silence that followed was deafening. Now, watching Buttons execute a perfect sliding turn that would make a hockey player jealous, Grant understood what Tessa had known all along. The Vraxi weren't incomprehensible, alien monsters. They were children, children with claws and scales, and instincts honed by millions of years of evolution. Yes, but children nonetheless. Incoming, Tessa called out casually. Grant looked up to see Ambassador Kravix approaching down the corridor, his massive form moving with predatory grace. The ambassador had visited every day since they'd taken custody of the cubs, initially out of desperation, and increasingly out of what Grant could only describe as wonder. Ambassador. Grant greeted him with a respectful nod. Kravix's eyes were fixed on the observation window, watching his people's young slide down the hallway in fuzzy purple socks. His membrane nictitating, the Vraxi equivalent of tears. In all the cycles of our civilization, the ambassador said slowly, we have approached child-rearing as training for survival. We taught them to hunt, to fight, to dominate. He gestured toward the window. We never taught them to slide. Humans believe play is survival training, Grant offered. Just a different kind. Inside the habitat, Tessa had joined the cubs, sliding down the hallway in her own socked feet, arms outstretched for balance. The cubs chirped and bounded around her, their tail movements displaying clear joy. Your Tessa is teaching them something we forgot, Kravix said. That strength, without happiness, is merely existence. That the fiercest warriors need to know how to live, not just how to kill. The ambassador turned to Grant, and there was something profound in his expression. The council believed humanity was too soft, too emotional, too playful to be taken seriously. They thought these traits were weaknesses. And now? Grant asked. Now I understand why your species thrives despite your physical limitations. Kravix watched as Pickle attempted a sliding jump and tumbled into a roll, chittering with what could only be laughter. You have weaponized joy itself. Back in the habitat, Tessa caught Grant's eye through the window and gave him a thumbs up. Behind her, 3 of the galaxy's most dangerous juvenile predators were having the time of their lives, sliding down a hallway in soft socks, discovering that life could be more than survival. And humanity, the soft species that everyone underestimated, had once again proven that sometimes the greatest strength wasn't in claws or scales or military might. Sometimes it was just in knowing when to hand out fuzzy socks and let the children play.